Hello, everybody. We are continuing discussion about Pentax cameras. This is a part 2 of this series. And today we will discuss a Pentax MX. Now, this is a very good camera. It actually does not have a lot of issues compared to some of the other Pentax models. I would say it's probably the most reliable out of the 5 that we have here on the bench. But again, every once in a while, an issue or two may arise, so we'll go ahead and discuss these scenarios right now. All right, so one issue that is fairly common with this camera model is shutter locking up or not completing the cycle. Just like I've mentioned in a part 1 series regarding the Spotmatic camera, when you wind it, it releases it, it follows the sequence of operation. However, it does not complete the cycle, and a lot of times the mirror will actually flip up since it wouldn't complete the cycle, and it'll stay on until just miraculously the shutter just finally will complete that cycle and release the lever and will drop the mirror. Again, not a big deal. Doesn't require any replacement parts, but will require proper overhaul and CLA. And I also wanted to mention that pretty much in all of the Pentax cameras, except for these ZX series, you will have to take care of the light seals. Okay, the seals are important. In majority of the cases, they are deteriorated, which means that even if a camera is fully functional, there's no issues, visual issues with light meters or operational problems, your photographs, your images might be overexposed by the fact that the seals are deteriorated, as well as the replacement of the mirror cushion is also important to prevent any problems with the mirror dampening. Okay, alrighty, so that was problem number 1. The metering on this camera, I don't think I've ever seen a problem with the meter not working. It uses a different meter than these two. It uses the LED based digital metering rather than the analog here. And the only problem that you may encounter with the metering is sometimes it will engage, sometimes it will not. That tells me that the contact, which is located here to engage the light meter, is either oxidated or defective, which means that we'll have to disassemble the bottom cover, remove the contact, properly clean it, place it back in. Okay, so that does happen from time to time. Also, just like with pretty much all Pentax cameras, be wary of the fact that if the light meter doesn't work at all, just make sure to clean the contacts and the battery cap from any visual oxidation or corrosion. All right, another possible issue could be, and pretty much most of these Pentax cameras suffer from it one way or another, is a slow speed governor. Especially on this model, it's differently built than these two models. It's in a different location, so it does need to be lubricated fairly regularly. So if you have issues with slower speeds, not completing the cycle or just not working at all, or it just starts to activate but then it just ceases completely until you switch to a higher speed, then you know that the governor, the slow speeds governor, needs to be either repaired or lubricated and basically addressed one way or another. So other than that, there's really not much to talk about here. The self-timer, again, in my experience, never presented any issues. It always worked. So we'll just we'll just leave it as is with this camera. It's actually a pretty good sturdy camera, one of the better examples of Pentax models. Okay, so let's go ahead and swap them out right now, and let's talk about a different model, ME Super. So ME Super, again, it's about the same dimensions as the MX, give or take, but it has a couple of issues that are very unique to this particular model, ME Super, okay, and it causes a lot of problems, and it's a big issue. This has to do with one specific component, and that has to be the rubber washer, or maybe let's put it this way, what used to be rubber and then became deteriorated goo that Pentax used to secure some of their levers here on the mirror side internally. And as it deteriorated, it basically prevents the levers from properly moving and advancing the mirror as well as the winding lever. Again, it's a fairly common problem. I'd say about 2/3 of the ME Super cameras have that problem and need to be addressed, and it's a pretty complicated endeavor that requires pretty much removal of the entire front panel, and it's not as simple as removing panels here from these two cameras. A lot more wires, a lot more positioning, and then once we get there, we'll basically have to remove that washer, clean it. What's important is not just removing the washer, but after that you need to clean that entire area, the post where the washer used to sit, the screw, because all of those immediate areas are exposed to that sticky substance. And if you leave them that way as is and just remove the washer, rubber washer, it will not solve the problem. Okay, it might improve it for a little bit, but then in a short while, if you haven't used the camera, it will come back and it will lock it up. So that's important. It's a big issue there. All right, so let's see what else can we talk about this model. And I think that is the biggest issue. Another thing you can find with this issue, or with these cameras, is an issue with LEDs. When you read, and again, this is digital based LED metering, every once in a while, if you read the meter and the LEDs start jumping up and down, like it's not really steady, it's not locking into one specific exposure, okay, it could be, and very likely, due to the sensor and the contacts right here underneath, and they get oxidated, similar to, let's say, Minolta XG series. They have these contacts on the ASA dial as well as aperture. They use the same kind of material here, so it gets extremely dirty with time. And again, when I say time, these are in some cases 45, 50-year-old cameras. Okay, give or take. So, and in most cases, when we look into this area, it's never been cleaned, and so logically it would make sense to clean it, and that's what we normally do with these cameras by default. It's part of our standard process. Whether the customer complains about that issue or not, we try to address it in our standard overhaul. But that's another thing you can look for. And again, another thing, you see another example of Pentax with a corrosion. You can probably see it from here. There's a little bit of a corrosion already on this camera, on the battery cap here on the camera. If I remove it here, yeah, there's a little bit of remnants here, so that tells me that there was a battery here for a long period of time, and for whatever reason, Pentexes are so susceptible to this battery either drain or leaking. I don't know why. It's the same kind of battery that Minolta X700 uses. I know many other cameras, Olympus's, but Pentax's are for some reason, I don't even know how to explain it, but they cause these batteries to leak more than a different model. So in any case, just something to look for if and when you are looking for a camera, is just to check to see the status or cleanliness of that area to make sure that there is no problem. Okay, it can always be easily cleaned, but you want to make sure it's not completely stuck in there. All right, other than that, just light seals, and that's pretty much all we do with it. And overall, it's not a bad camera. Not the best, but not bad. Alrighty, and then lastly, we will touch base on this semi-automatic ZXM. Okay, now this particular camera, it's kind of a intermediary camera between fully automatic autofocus cameras and kind of like a hybrid in a way, but we still service them. But they do come with two major issues, especially with age. Issue number one is a sequence motor. A sequence motor drive is a drive that pretty much controls everything on this camera. It does a lot of things. It controls the aperture, the winding, a lot of things. The winder obviously has its own winding motor, but it's all kind of, works together alongside this sequence motor. So when you have, and if you have this camera, if you have the battery in it, you press the on button and you see this whining noise, continuous whining noise for about 2-3 seconds as you push and hold the release button here, you know that is the definite problem, no question about it. All right, so we do service it. The way we service it is we remove the front panel. We would basically remove the motor, repair or replace it, depending on whether or not we have those parts available. Another issue that you may encounter with it too is the mirror lever. The mirror lever basically controls the positioning and the operation of the flipping up and down of the mirror assembly. Okay, and that's besides the motor. So let's say if you have a working motor drive, you release the camera and there's no winding sound, it releases the camera normally. However, your mirror kind of gets stuck 1/3 of the way up, just like that, okay? Chances are that this lever is actually broken. It's located here in this, underneath here. I've done 1 or 2 videos about that as well. So chances are that lever is broken, and unfortunately we do not have replacements for that mirror, unless we just, let's say this one seems to have a good lever, unless we just remove one from another donor camera. They're hard to come by. All right, another issue with this particular camera, and again, these cameras are utilized in schools and colleges even right now. Students use these cameras, K1000 and MEs, not as much Spotmatics or MXs for whatever reason. Another thing you may encounter here is a double exposure, or basically it's, it causes overlapping. That happens because there's a sensor right here underneath that needs to be properly cleaned. So yes, that's a relatively common issue. So we'll have to remove the bottom plate and remove the winding assembly, remove the sensor, clean the contacts on the sensor and the contacts themselves, put it all back together, position it properly, and then that should rectify that issue. All right, and then one more problem with it, and that is fairly common, just like with this camera, is a battery door. Okay, it just sometimes it snaps, and it just simply doesn't lock. All right, so that can be also addressed. That's not a problem. We can take care of that issue. So that's about all I want to talk about with Pentax cameras. And if you have any comments or questions, you can always comment down below or email us at garyscamera@yahoo.com. Thank you for watching.